When I picked up the phone to ask my son Max when the wedding would be, my daughter-in-law, Lena, looked me straight in the eye and smiled coldly. "Oh, we already got married yesterday. We only invited special people." Those words hit me like a bucket of ice water. Special people. I, the one who had paid their $500 monthly rent for 3 years, furnished their apartment, and filled their fridge whenever it was empty, was not special. I stood in my own living room, phone in hand that suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Max avoided my gaze, while Lena sat comfortably on the sofa I had bought for them. The pale pink dress I had chosen for her wedding hung uselessly in my closet, next to a new pair of shoes and the illusion that I would be part of the most important day in my only son's life. Before we begin, if you believe no mother should be treated like a bank, no woman should be called confused for choosing freedom, and every soul deserves respect, make sure to subscribe. It's free, and it helps us share more powerful stories of dignity and courage from Chronicles of Auntie Hattie. Because sometimes, saying no is the bravest thing you'll ever do. I had spent $200 on that dress, imagining myself appearing in the wedding photos I would never be in. For weeks, I had planned everything, saved $1,000 as a wedding gift, called my sister Diana in Chicago to share the happy news, cleaned my house from top to bottom believing that, after the ceremony, they would come by to celebrate with me. All of it shattered in a single moment, poisoned by 4 words, only special people. Max finally looked up, speaking in a rehearsed tone. "Mom, it was an intimate thing, very small, just the 2 of us and the witnesses." But I knew it was a lie. Online, I saw the wedding photos, Lena's parents standing proudly beside the couple, her siblings clinking champagne glasses. I even saw Lena's white wedding gown, the one partly funded by the $800 personal expense I had given her just a month before. I saw everything I was never meant to see. A week later, exactly 7 days after that humiliation, Lena called again. This time, her voice was different. Gone was the smug tone that had excluded me from the wedding. Instead, she sounded nervous, pleading. "Renata, the rent is overdue. The landlord is pressuring us and says, if we don't pay this week, he'll kick us out. You forgot to make the transfer." She spoke as if the world were ending. I stayed silent for a few seconds, remembering all the times I had rushed to the bank to transfer money for them, the plans I'd canceled just to make sure they had a roof over their heads, the nights I ate nothing but beans and rice so I could cover their endless wants. And now, after cutting me out of the most important moment of their lives, they had the audacity to call as if nothing had happened. My voice was calm, so calm it surprised even me. "Lena," I said, "didn't I warn you that I only help special people?" On the other end of the line, the silence was so heavy I could hear my own heartbeat. For the first time in years, the one trembling wasn't me, it was her. She stammered, "Renata, I don't understand. We were always special to you. You're like a second mom to me." Lies, all of it, lies wrapped in the sugary tone she only used when she wanted something. The same voice that had begged for money for her wedding dress, her honeymoon, and her ring, things I had partly paid for, though I was never there to witness the exchange of those rings. For years, I had lived as if walking on eggshells, measuring every word, every gesture, every gift, hoping to earn a crumb of affection from my own son. I was the perfect mother, the considerate mother-in-law, the silent sponsor who never complained even while being treated like she didn't exist. But those 4 words, only special people, awakened something long dormant within me, a boundary, and for the first time, I held it firm, with one simple word. An O. That night, after hanging up on Lena, I sat in the dark for hours, but this time, my tears weren't born of sadness, they were born of anger and awakening. I had endured enough. I turned on the light, sat on the edge of my bed, and for the first time in my life, I began to count every single dollar I had spent on them. I opened the drawer, took out my notebook and old receipts. My hand trembled, but the numbers were crystal clear. Monthly rent, $500 times 36 months equals $18,000. Food and supplies, about $200 per month times 36 equals $7,200. Birthday, Christmas, and anniversary gifts, at least $3,000. Lena's medical emergencies, $800. Car loan they never repaid, $2,500. Air conditioner repair, $600. Living room furniture, $200. Total, $33,400. That was the exact price of my systematic foolishness, the money I had drawn from my pension, my savings, and the inheritance my late husband left. So I could live out my old age in peace, and for what? To be treated like a stranger on my own son's wedding day. I cried again, but not from hurt this time. These tears were of fury, years of quiet endurance, of being made to feel that my love was a burden, my presence an inconvenience, and my only worth, monetary debt. I cried for the foolish mother I had been, the woman who lost herself trying to become indispensable to people who saw her as replaceable. When morning came, something inside me had shifted. It wasn't just the sting of betrayal anymore, it was something deeper, colder. That I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. The same tired eyes stared back at me, the same wrinkles told the story of years of unreciprocated love, but there was something new in my gaze, a quiet steel, a will I hadn't known was mine. That I brewed my coffee as I had done every morning for 40 years. But this time, I didn't think of Max. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't wait for a message that would never come. For the first time in a long time, I was my own first concern of the day. That I sat at the dining table, the same table where I had calculated their bills, prepared their gifts, and cried in silence after being dismissed. But today, that table would witness something different, my awakening. That I took out my checkbook, my bank statements, and began recalculating everything. The number $33,400 echoed in my mind like an indictment. Each line of expense was proof of how I had sold my dignity, one transfer at a time. As I stared at the papers, my phone rang. Max's name lit up the screen. Once, my heart would have raced just seeing it. Now, it didn't move at all. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then stopped at point. 10 minutes later, Lena called. I ignored it too. A text from Max appeared. Mom, please answer. We need to talk. I deleted it without reading another word. That afternoon, I decided to go for a walk. For the first time in months, I walked with no purpose tied to them, no trip to the bank for transfers, no errands for their groceries, no pharmacy runs for Lena. I walked simply because I wanted to. I passed by the park where I used to take Max as a little boy. I remembered how he once wrapped his arms around me and said, "You're the best mom in the world." Where was that boy now? When did he become a man who saw his mother as an ATM with feelings? When did I start confusing love with money? When did I start believing I had to buy my son's affection? I stopped in front of the bank, the same one where I had set up all those automatic transfers to Max and Lena. Through the glass, I saw the branch manager, Mr. Klein, who waved warmly when he recognized me. He had processed every payment I ever sent them, witnessing my balance shrink month after month. I walked in and went straight to his desk. "Mr. Klein, I need to cancel the automatic transfers I have programmed." He looked surprised. "Are you sure, Mrs. Richter? Did something happen?" "What happened," I said quietly, "is that I finally opened my eyes. I want to cancel everything, and I need advice on how to protect my accounts. I don't want anyone else to have access to my money." While he handled the paperwork, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Max, then Lena, then Max again. It was as if they could feel the flow of money being cut off. I turned off my phone completely. When Mr. Klein handed me the documents, his voice was gentle, gentler than any concern my son had ever shown me. "Mrs. Richter, I hope you're not being pressured to make these changes." I smiled faintly. "I'm not being pressured, Mr. Klein. On the contrary, I've finally stopped pressuring myself." When I stepped out of the bank, I felt lighter, as if I'd shed a massive weight I'd carried for years. For the first time in forever, my money belonged entirely to me. No longer would I feed 2 adults who saw me as a resource, not a person. I walked home in the soft afternoon sun. With every step, I could feel it. A new era of my life had begun, one of dignity, clarity, and freedom. When I returned home that afternoon, 3 cars were already parked outside, Max's, Lena's, and one I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped. They had keys. I had trusted them with those keys once, foolishly believing that one day, they would take care of me the way I had taken care of them. I took a deep breath and opened the door. What I saw inside is something I will never forget. Max was sitting on the sofa, head buried in his hands. Lena paced the room like a caged animal, and a gray-haired man I had never seen before was rifling through my papers on the dining table. "What is happening here?" I asked, my voice louder than I expected. All 3 turned toward me, staring as if I were the intruder in my own home. Lena spoke first, her tone desperate. "Renata, thank God you're here. We need to talk. Mr. Fisher is from the law firm we consulted about your situation." "My situation?" I repeated, unervingly calm. "What situation?" "I'm doing perfectly fine." Max lifted his head. The eyes that once belonged to a sweet little boy now held only financial panic. "Mom, we went to the bank. They told us you canceled all the transfers. Mr. Klein said you also blocked our access to your accounts. We don't understand why you did that." The stranger stepped forward, extending a hand with a practiced, insincere smile. Mrs. Richter, I'm Dr. Fisher, a family law attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental well-being and have asked me to assess the situation. I didn't take his hand. I walked straight to the table and gathered my papers from his grip. These are my private documents. You have no right to touch them without my consent. Mom, Max interrupted, with that condescending tone I'd heard far too many times. We're worried about you. Your behavior has been strange lately. First, you cut us off financially with no explanation. Then, you ignore our calls. We think you might need professional help. Lena approached, her voice dripping with artificial concern as she tried to take my hand. Renata, honey, we know you're under a lot of stress. Maybe the loneliness is affecting you more than you think. At your age, episodes of confusion are normal. The word confusion rang in my ears like an alarm bell, and in that moment, I understood everything. They weren't here to help me, they were here to declare me incompetent and seize control of my money. I am not confused, I said, my voice sharp as glass. I'm clearer than I've been in years. And you are going to leave my house. Right now. Mrs. Richter, Mr. Fisher interjected, keeping his tone measured. Your children have a right to intervene if they believe your ability to make financial decisions is impaired. They've documented several concerning behaviors. I laughed, a dry, cutting laugh that sliced through the air. Like what? Deciding that my money belongs to me? Choosing not to fund the lives of two adults who treat me like garbage? Lena shot up, face flushed with anger. We never treated you badly. You're part of our family. Everything you have will belong to us one day anyway. We're just speeding up the process. There it was, the naked truth, stripped of pretense that I and their minds. I was already dead, just a walking ATM that hadn't shut off yet. Out, I said, pointing toward the door. All three of you. Get out of my house. Max stood, his face twisted in childish outrage. Mom, we can't just leave. We have obligations, rent, car payments, the credit card you co-signed for. You can't just cut us off overnight. I can't. My voice rose, strong and unwavering. Who says I can't? For years, I paid rent for a home that wasn't mine. I filled a refrigerator in a house where I wasn't welcome. I financed a life that had no room for me. Mr. Fisher opened his briefcase and took out a stack of papers. Mrs. Richter, we prepared some documents that could facilitate this transition, a power of attorney that would allow Max and Lena to manage your finances more efficiently. It would only be temporary, until you feel better. I took the papers and tossed them straight into the trash. The only transition happening here, I said, is yours, to the front door. Lena began to cry, but I knew those tears. They weren't sorrow, they were rage disguised as weakness. You can't do this to us, Renata. We were counting on you. We made plans based on your support. We bought things. We took on obligations because we knew we could count on you. Obligations based on my money, I replied. Not on my happiness. Not on my company. Just my money. And now that I've decided my money is better spent on my own life, suddenly I'm a confused old woman who needs guardianship. Max stepped forward. I instinctively moved back. The boy I once rocked to sleep now stood before me as a stranger. Mom, we made mistakes, he said, pretending remorse. The wedding was a misunderstanding. Lena was nervous. I was under pressure. We can fix this, if you just become reasonable again. Reasonable? I repeated. My voice trembled for a second, then turned to steel. Being reasonable means continuing to bankroll your life while you treat me like a stranger. It means pretending it doesn't hurt to be excluded from the most important day of my only son's life. Mr. Fisher gathered his papers, his voice cold and professional. Mrs. Richter, this isn't over. Your family has legal options. If you are making irrational financial decisions due to mental health issues, a judge can determine that you require guardianship. I met his gaze, each word deliberate and sharp. Mr. Fisher, I suggest you do thorough research before you threaten a 71-year-old woman who has managed her finances flawlessly for 40 years, who raised her son alone after her husband's death, who ran a household and worked honorably until retirement, and who, until last week, financially supported two fully capable adults. Lena stopped crying, her face hard and pale. This won't stay like this, Renata. We have rights, and lawyers too. Perfect, I said evenly. Hire all the lawyers you want. With your own money, of course, because mine is no longer available to fund your legal tantrums. The three of them left, carrying the wounded pride of people unaccustomed to hearing the word no. Before walking out, Max turned to me and said, Mom, this is going to end very badly for you. You'll end up alone, with no one to take care of you when you really need it. I looked at him, my voice clear and soft as crystal. Axe, I'm already alone. The difference is, now it's by my own choice, not by your neglect. The door closed behind them, and the house filled with the most beautiful silence I had ever heard, the silence of freedom. That night, I couldn't sleep, not out of regret, but because adrenaline was surging through my veins. That I felt as though I had just reclaimed a piece of sovereignty that had been quietly stolen from me for years. That I lay staring at the ceiling, my mind not numb for once, but sharp and alive. That if Max and Lena wanted a battle, I would fight, but not with emotion this time. With strategy. At exactly 6 o'clock the next morning, I was dressed and ready to face the day. My first destination, the office of Mr. Weber, the lawyer who had handled my late husband's will years ago. A man of quiet authority, calm voice, and kind eyes that inspired trust. That I told him everything, about the wedding, the intrusion, the threats, and how Max and Lena planned to have me declared mentally incompetent. Mr. Weber listened silently, then said, Mrs. Richter, what your children tried to do yesterday is more common than you think. It's called elder financial abuse, and it's a federal crime. The words federal crime sent a chill through me, half comfort, half horror. Comfort, because I wasn't crazy. Horror, because what had been done to me was not just cruelty, it was criminal. We have to document everything, he continued. Every transfer, every gift, every time they pressured you for money. We'll also update your will to protect your assets from any future manipulation attempts. For 3 hours, we went through every statement, every transaction, every receipt. When Mr. Weber finally looked up, he gave a low whistle. $33, 403 years. Mrs. Richter, with that money, you could have lived comfortably, traveled, and enjoyed your retirement. Instead, you funded the lives of 2 adults who didn't even respect you enough to invite you to their wedding. When I left his office, I had a plan for the first time in years. Step 1, change all the locks. Step 2, install a full security system. Step 3, open a new account at a different bank. Step 4, start living the life I'd postponed for far too long. My first stop was Mr. Summers' hardware store, the same place where I'd once bought supplies to fix Max and Lena's apartment. That he looked surprised to see me. Mrs. Richter. What brings you here today? Another emergency with your son? I smiled, light but steady. No, Mr. Summer. This time it's for my own house. I need to change all the locks, and I want the best ones you've got. He blinked, then nodded without asking further. As I browsed the locks, his son Ethan, who handled security system installations, walked in. As if fate itself had sent him. I turned to him and said, Ethan, I also need surveillance cameras, a complete system. Price isn't an issue. They scheduled the installation for the next morning. When I returned home, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I answered, and heard Lena's smooth, syrupy voice. Renata, it's Lena. Please don't hang up. We need to talk like civilized adults. Speak, I said, my tone ice cold. Listen, I know you're upset about the wedding. It was a mistake. Max and I have talked about it, and we want to make it up to you. How about a special dinner to celebrate our marriage, with you? We can do it at your house, cook together like we used to. I nearly laughed. That tone, soft, sweet, carefully rehearsed, always meant one thing: money. How much rent do you owe, Lena? I asked flatly. Silence. Then, her hesitant reply, 2 months, $1,000 total. But that's not why I'm calling, Renata. We really miss you in our lives. Do you miss me, or my money? A pause, then a long sigh. Both, she said, her honesty colder than any lie. I won't lie to you. Yes, we need your help, but we love you too. You're important to us. If I'm so important, I asked quietly, why wasn't I important enough to be at your wedding? Why am I not important enough to get a single call that doesn't involve money? When was the last time you called just to ask how I was doing? Silence again. The answer, of course, was never. Lena, I said, I'll explain this once. For 3 years, you treated me like an ATM with feelings. You used me. Ignored me. Humiliated me. And finally, you insulted me in the worst possible way. Now that the money's gone, you suddenly remember you love me. Renata, please, there is no please. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't special enough to attend your wedding. Now I'm making mine. I hung up. Then turned off my phone completely. That I wanted nothing, no sound, no interruption, to disturb the peace of my liberation. That afternoon, I visited the salon, the one I had cancelled on countless times because my son needed something urgent. Mrs. Richter, my favorite stylist, Cynthia, exclaimed. What a surprise. I thought you'd forgotten about us. I didn't forget you, Cynthia, I said, smiling softly. I just forgot that I also deserve to be cared for. I asked for the full treatment, haircut, color, manicure, facial. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself, and felt no guilt. Cynthia chatted about her life, her children, her dreams. That I listened, and realized how long it had been since I'd had a conversation that wasn't about Max and Lena. When she finished, she looked at me through the mirror and smiled. You look beautiful, Mrs. Richter. But more than that, you look free. Did something good happen? I looked at my reflection, soft hair, bright eyes, a glow I hadn't seen in years. Yes, Cynthia, I said. I finally learned to say no. When I stepped out of the salon, a gentle breeze swept through my new hair. That I felt as though the whole world had opened up, not because I was young again, but because I was alive again. That golden afternoon, I understood something simple and profound. Freedom isn't something people give you, that it's something you reclaim for yourself, and the first breath of freedom was the sweetest thing I had ever tasted. When I came home that afternoon, there was a strange car parked in front of my house. That my heart clenched, a flicker of fear that Max and Lena had returned, armed with a new round of legal assistance. But as I got closer, I saw an elderly woman sitting on my front steps, holding a porcelain mug. Mrs. Richter, she asked when I stepped out of the car. Yes, that's me. Can I help you? She smiled kindly. I'm Eleanor Brooks. I live next door. We've been neighbors for years, but we've never really talked. Yesterday, I heard loud voices coming from your house, and I was worried. Is everything all right? The sincerity in her voice nearly brought tears to my eyes. A stranger showed more concern than my own son ever had. Come in, Mrs. Brooks, I said softly. I'll make you a coffee, and tell you a story you won't believe. As the coffee dripped, I told her everything, from the secret wedding and the cold phone call to the visit with the so-called attorney who came to declare me mentally unfit. Eleanor listened quietly, nodding every so often. When I finished, her eyes were glistening. Mrs. Richter, you did the right thing, she said gently. I went through something similar with my daughter 5 years ago. I thought it was my duty to fund her adult life. I believed she wouldn't love me unless I kept giving her money. What happened? I asked. I stopped the money when I realized she only called when she needed something. At first, it was awful, threats, guilt, emotional blackmail. But after 6 months, she called and genuinely apologized. Now, we have a real relationship, based on love, not money. Her words were like a cool breeze through my mind, a reassurance that I wasn't alone, and that my choice was right. Do you think Max and Lena will ever understand? I asked. Eleanor looked at me, her tone firm yet tender. Maybe yes, maybe no. But that's no longer your responsibility, Mrs. Richter. Your responsibility now is to live your own life. That night, for the first time in 3 years, I went to bed without worrying about their rent, or whether they had enough to eat, or if they'd scold me for transferring money late. That I thought only of myself, of the future, and I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, Ethan and Mr. Summer arrived right on time to change the locks and install the security cameras. As they worked, my phone rang again and again, unknown numbers. Lena was still trying, this time from different phones, but I had learned a new skill. Complete and glorious disregard for calls that threatened my peace. Mrs. Richter, Ethan said when he finished installing the system, this setup will give you total peace of mind. You'll be able to see who's at your door from your phone, even when you're away. And if anyone breaks in, the police will be notified automatically. I smiled, bittersweetly. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had to install security cameras to protect myself from my own son, but strangely, the pain no longer burned. It was just a practical step to safeguard my freedom. After they left, I did something I'd avoided for years. I called my sister Diana in Chicago. When she answered, her voice was full of surprise. Renata. Sister. How are you? We haven't spoken in months. I'm good, Diana. Better than good, I said softly. I'm calling to tell you that I've finally come to my senses. And I told her everything, from the secret wedding to the humiliation, the confrontation with the lawyer, and my decision to end the financial support. Diana listened silently, only sighing now and then. When I finished, her voice came through, quiet but firm. Renata, it was about time. Every time we talked, it broke my heart hearing you brag about how much money you gave them, as if love could be measured in dollars. I wanted to tell you something before, but I didn't know how. What did you want to tell me? I asked. That Max never spoke lovingly of you at family gatherings. It was always, my mom helped me with this, or my mom bought me that, but never, I miss my mom, or I love my mom. It was as if you were a service provider, not a person. I was silent. Her words cut deep, but like antiseptic on an old wound, the sting meant healing had begun. Diana continued, her tone grave. You know what else I noticed? Lena always spoke about you in the future tense. When Renata is no longer here, we can remodel her house, or, when we inherit, we'll invest in the business. It was as if they were waiting for you to die to really live. The words hit like a splash of ice water straight to my heart. They hadn't just seen me as a bank. They saw me as a temporary obstacle between them and the life of comfort they imagined. While I was exhausting myself trying to make them happy, they were planning a future without me in it. That I sat alone in the kitchen, staring into the distance at a whole lifetime spent on love, sacrifice, and family, and in return, only cold calculation. The doorbell rang. That I glanced at the new security monitor. It was Eleanor, holding a steaming porcelain mug. I opened the door. I thought you might need some company after everything you told me yesterday, she said with a warm smile. That we sat in the living room as she shared more of her story. My daughter said the exact same things to me that Lena said to you. You're like a second mom to me, we're special to you, everything will be ours one day anyway. They all read from the same script, Mrs. Richter, the Handbook of Manipulation. I let out a half laugh, half sigh. Do you think such a handbook actually exists? Not officially, she said, smiling, but it seems they all study from the same material. Chapter 1, Make her feel indispensable. Chapter 2, Create endless financial emergencies. Chapter 3, When she resists, question her mental health. We laughed, but it was the bitter laughter of women who'd seen too much. How tragic, how absurd, that the scripts of emotional manipulation all sounded the same. Did you ever feel guilty for cutting off the money? I asked. Every single day for the first 3 months, she admitted. But then I saw results. My daughter got a second job. Her husband started working weekends. They learned to live within their means, and more importantly, they learned that I was a person, not a resource. That afternoon, I did something I had postponed for years. I visited my husband Robert's grave. The cemetery was quiet and serene, the grass overgrown around his headstone, neglected by my long absence. That I knelt, laid my hand on the cool stone, and whispered, Robert, my love. I think I lost myself for a while. After you left, I poured all my energy into Max. I wanted to be the perfect mother, thinking it would fill the hole you left. But in the process, I forgot who I was. The breeze stirred gently, and for a moment, I could almost feel him listening. Our son has become someone I barely recognize. Or maybe he was always this way, and I refused to see it. The money you left so I could live in peace, I spent it keeping them comfortable. But not anymore, my love. I've learned. I cleaned the grave, replaced the old flowers with fresh ones, and sat there for another hour, embracing the silence. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing home to deal with one of Max and Lena's emergencies. On the drive back, the wind played softly through my hair, and a strange feeling rose in me. Peace. For the first time, I truly felt it. This life, at last, belonged to me. When I returned home from that peaceful afternoon at the cemetery, my heart clenched again. Parked outside were 3 familiar cars, Max's, Lena's, and 2 others I didn't recognize. That I didn't rush inside. My hands trembled as I unlocked my phone and checked the new security cameras. On the screen, I saw them clearly, Max, Lena, and 2 unfamiliar men standing by the gate, arguing, pointing toward my house that I didn't dare get out. I called Mr. Weber immediately. Mr. Weber, they're at my house again. This time they brought more people. What should I do? His voice was low but firm. Stay in your car, Mrs. Richter. Do not engage. I'll be there right away, and I'm calling the police. After our meeting yesterday, I filed for a temporary restraining order. They are not allowed to be on your property. Less than 15 minutes later, 2 police cars and Mr. Weber arrived. Through the car window, I watched the officers talk to Max. He was waving his arms, shouting. Lena was crying, trying to make it all look like a misunderstanding, but I felt nothing this time. No fear, no trembling. Just a strange, calm detachment. One of the officers came to my car. Ma'am, you can step out safely now. Your visitors are leaving immediately. I opened the door and got out. Max shouted from across the street, Mom, this is ridiculous. We're your family. You can't call the police on your own son. I looked him straight in the eyes, my voice steady and cold. Family doesn't threaten lawsuits for mental incompetence. Family doesn't break into someone's home without permission. Family doesn't treat their mother like an ATM. Lena screamed through tears, You're going to pay us everything you owe. We have bills you co-signed for. You can't just abandon us like this. Mr. Weber stepped forward, his voice crisp and commanding, the way it would sound in court. Mrs. Schuster, any future communication must go through my office. And I advise you to consult with your own attorney before making threats of collection. My client has full documentation of every voluntary payment she made over the last 3 years. I stood still, watching them climb into their cars, faces twisted in frustration. For the first time, I didn't shake that I knew the law was on my side now that I had an ally. That evening, Eleanor invited me to dinner with her and her visiting daughter. Their home was warm, cozy, filled with easy laughter and gentle conversation. What a real family feels like. They talked, listened, and cared for one another without a single demand. Without guilt, without conditions. When her daughter left, I murmured quietly, I wanted that with Max, too. Eleanor smiled softly, her eyes kind but clear, and maybe you'll have it one day. But first, he has to learn that you're a person who deserves respect, not just a source of income. That night, I slept deeply and peacefully. But the calm didn't last at I and the days that followed. The cameras caught Max and Lena's car driving slowly around my neighborhood, every day. Sometimes they stopped for a few minutes. Sometimes they just sat there, watching them. Weber told me to document every appearance. Their persistence will work in our favor, he said. Every time they show up after being told not to, it strengthens our case for a permanent restraining order. Then, one Friday morning, while I was having breakfast, the doorbell rang. On the camera screen appeared a young woman, well-dressed, professional, holding a folder, smiling politely that I didn't know her, but the look in her eyes told me this was no friendly visit. That I opened the door. Good morning, Mrs. Renata Richter, she said. I'm a social investigator from the Office of Senior Services. We've received a report that you may be in an at-risk situation, and we need to conduct a wellness check. My blood ran cold. Max and Lena had escalated again, this time, bringing in government authorities. Can I see your ID? I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm. Of course. She handed me a real badge. Mrs. Schmidt, may I come in and speak with you? I nodded. Refusal might look like non-cooperation. Mrs. Schmidt sat down on the sofa and opened her file. Mrs. Richter, we've received reports that you've shown concerning changes in your financial behavior, that you've cut off contact with your family, and that you've installed unnecessary security systems out of paranoia. We were also told you've refused medical and legal help from your loved ones. Every word fell with a familiar rhythm, Lena's language, Lena's style that I recognized it instantly. They were building a portrait of me as a delusional old woman. Miss Schmidt, I said evenly, I'd like to call my lawyer before answering any questions. Ma'am, she replied quickly, this isn't a legal interrogation. It's just a wellness check. If you have nothing to hide, there should be no problem speaking with me. That phrase, if you have nothing to hide, ignited something in me. It was the voice of intrusion, of manipulation. Exactly like Lena's. I turned my back, picked up the phone. Miss, I'm calling my lawyer. You can wait here or come back another day, but I will not answer any questions without legal representation present. 20 minutes later, Mr. Weber arrived. When he saw her ID, his tone turned icy. "Miss Schmidt, I hope you have a court order to be here. My client is under legal representation. Any unauthorized investigation constitutes harassment." The woman faltered. "Sir, we received reports from concerned family members about her well-being. It's our duty to investigate." Mr. Weber didn't raise his voice, but his words were scalpel-sharp. "What family? The same family that tried to trick her into signing a power of attorney? The same family that broke into her home and read her private documents? The same family that excluded her from important life events while living off her money?" He opened his briefcase and placed a thick file on the table. "Here is full documentation of my client's financial and emotional abuse. $33,400 withdrawn from her accounts over 3 years. Repeated social isolation and emotional coercion. If anyone deserves investigation here, it's not my client." Mrs. Schmidt flipped through the pages. Her face paled. After a pause, she looked up. "Mrs. Richter, can you explain why you so abruptly stopped financially supporting your son?" I met her gaze and spoke slowly, each word deliberate, "Because I finally realized they were using me. Because I understood that, to them, I wasn't a mother, I was a bank account. Because I was done financing the lives of people who saw me as an obstacle." "But don't you feel it's your responsibility to help your family?" "My responsibility as a mother," I said firmly, "was to raise my son until he became an adult, to educate him, to give him the tools to stand on his own. My son is 35, married, and perfectly capable of supporting himself. Funding his adult life is not my duty, it's my choice. And I've chosen not to anymore." Mr. Weber added calmly, "Miss Schmidt, would you consider it normal for a 35-year-old man to be unable to pay his rent without help from his 71-year-old mother?" She hesitated. The expression in her eyes shifted. Finally, she closed the file and sighed. "Mrs. Richter, based on this conversation and the documents I've reviewed, I see no indication that you're at risk or in need of intervention. I'll close this case." When the door shut behind her, I sat down, heart pounding. Mr. Weber looked at me gravely. "Renata, this will keep escalating. Max and Lena are spending money they don't have to hire professionals to have you declared incompetent. Does that mean they're desperate?" I asked quietly. "It means exactly that. What else can they do? They can file a lawsuit for incompetence. It's costly and difficult, but if they find a sympathetic judge and a willing psychiatrist, they might convince the court to assign a guardian." My fingers tightened around the arm of the chair. The fear returned, but now it had a clear shape that a legal war was coming. "They could take control of my money," I whispered. "They could try," Mr. Weber said, "but we have evidence, strong, irrefutable evidence, that you're fully competent. And that they're driven by greed, not concern. We'll fight this." That night, I called Diana. After listening, she said in a low, firm voice, "Do you see how far they're willing to go for money? They're destroying family ties, spending what they don't have, tarnishing their own reputations, all just to regain access to your bank account." Her words struck me like nails to the heart. There was no going back. My son, the boy who once kissed me goodnight every evening, had become a man willing to have his own mother declared insane to steal her assets, and in that moment, I swore, I would fight to the very end, not just for my money, but for my dignity, and for my freedom. 3 months later, I received a thick envelope sealed in red wax. "Richter versus Richter, petition for declaration of incompetence." I opened it with trembling hands, yet an odd calm settled inside me. I had known this day would come. Max and Lena had truly sued me, claiming I was incapable of cognition and in need of a legal guardian. Mr. Weber arrived as soon as he heard. He read every page, his face growing darker with each one. "This is a full petition, Renata," he said slowly. "They've hired a very aggressive attorney, someone from Fisher & Lowe. I recognize the signature. They specialize in elder exploitation cases, but from the opposite side. They'll try to portray you as a confused, paranoid woman being manipulated by outsiders. And you'll defend me, won't you?" He gave a faint smile. "Until my last breath, Mrs. Richter. But I'll need you to stay calm, rational, and factual. The truth is on our side." The day of the hearing arrived under a gray sky, as if warning of a storm. I wore the gray suit my husband once bought me, and the silver brooch he gave me for our 25th anniversary. Outside the courthouse, Max and Lena stood with their lawyer, Mr. Fisher, the same man I had thrown out of my home. His eyes were cold, confident. Lena avoided my gaze, but Max stood tall, his eyes empty, like a stranger's. The courtroom was bright, the scent of old wood mingling with the flutter of turning pages. The judge was Mrs. Vogel, known for being strict but fair. As she reviewed the file, I heard my own name echo as if from far away. Case number 47A, 622. Petitioners, Max Richter and Lena Schuster. Respondent, Mrs. Renata Richter. The petitioner's attorney, Mr. Fisher, spoke first. Your Honor, we are here because we are deeply concerned for Mrs. Richter's mental and financial well-being. Over the past 6 months, she has exhibited erratic behavior, abrupt financial decisions, social isolation, paranoid security measures, and hostility toward her own family. Our clients believe she is suffering from cognitive decline and requires a legal guardian to protect her assets and safety. I nearly laughed. Every reasonable step I had taken to protect myself was being twisted into instability. He called the first witness, Lena. She stepped to the stand in a simple black dress, her face pale, her voice trembling. Renata has always been generous, she said, the tears falling at just the right moment. But lately, she became different. She said we were using her. She accused us of stealing. She changed the locks, installed cameras, and refused to see us. We're not after her money, Your Honor, we just want her to be safe. Mr. Fisher asked, did she ever behave violently? No, not physically. But she became verbally aggressive. Once she told me I was not a special person. A small laugh escaped from the back rows. The judge struck her gavel for order. I looked at Lena, not angry, not tender, just empty. Next came Max. He looked exhausted, with uneven stubble on his face. Mom stopped answering my calls. She told me she canceled the rent transfers after 3 years without any warning. I had to take on debts to cover the costs. I'm not angry, I'm just worried. She's acting like a stranger. Mr. Fisher asked, do you believe your mother is mentally sound? Max hesitated, then said, no. I think she's being manipulated by outsiders, maybe that lawyer, or her new neighbor. She doesn't trust anyone anymore. I looked at my son, searching for a spark of sincerity, and found only fear of losing his benefits. Then it was the defense's turn. Mr. Weber rose, his voice firm and resonant. Your Honor, this case is a textbook example of financial entitlement disguised as concern. My client, Mrs. Renata Richter, is a retired teacher with an impeccable history of financial management. The petitioners have no evidence of cognitive impairment, only outrage that the money supply has been cut off. He opened a folder and displayed a ledger. Here are records of $33,400 transferred over 3 years to support these 2 fully capable adults: rent, furniture, vacations, car repairs. All voluntary, all documented. When she stopped paying, they called her confused. That is not concern, Your Honor. That is coercion. He called me to the stand. My heart pounded, but I lifted my head and looked directly at the judge. Mrs. Richter, why did you stop supporting your son financially? I drew a deep breath and spoke each word clearly, because I finally understood that what I was getting from them was not love. It was a commercial transaction disguised as a family relationship. The room fell utterly silent. I continued, my voice steady. For 3 years, I paid $500 a month for their rent. I bought their furniture, filled their fridge, paid their bills. I thought I was helping them stand on their feet. Instead, I made them forget how to walk. Do you feel any remorse for cutting them off? The judge asked. No, Your Honor. Not anymore. Because I have finally realized that love given out of guilt isn't love, it's servitude. A few in the room wiped tears. I saw Eleanor in the gallery, clasping my hand in silent solidarity. The petitioners tried to counter with a psychological report written by a doctor they had hired. Mr. Weber objected immediately. Objection, Your Honor. The report was produced without an actual examination of my client. It is hearsay. The judge nodded. Sustained. Then Eleanor testified. I'm Mrs. Richter's neighbor, she said confidently. I've seen her every day these past months. She reads, she cooks, she gardens, she remembers everything. The only thing wrong with her is that she finally learned to say no. Light laughter rippled through the courtroom. When both sides finished, Judge Vogel delivered her ruling. Her voice rang clear in the hush. This court finds no evidence of cognitive impairment or incompetence in Mrs. Renata Richter. The petition is hereby dismissed. I held my breath as tears spilled over. Mr. Weber nodded, a rare smile flickering across his usually stern face. Max bowed his head. Lena turned away, her face bloodless. The judge added, deliberate and unsparing, what I see here is not mental decline, but moral decay, and it is not Mrs. Richter's. Case dismissed. The gavel fell like a shot of deliverance. As I stepped out of the courtroom, Eleanor and Mr. Weber walked beside me. The door closed behind us, the courthouse noise faded. I stopped at the steps and drew a deep breath. The afternoon air was clean, and I felt something I once thought lost forever, dignity. Eleanor squeezed my hand, her voice soft but sure. You did it, Renata. You took back your life. I nodded, eyes still blurred with tears. Yes. I just had to fight my own family to do it. Mr. Weber turned to me, that rare smile returning. Justice isn't always about punishment, Mrs. Richter. Sometimes it's simply about reclaiming truth. And today, you did. I lifted my face to the sky. The pale sunlight warmed my skin, clear and gentle. I knew, the war wasn't over, but the greatest battle of my life was that I had won, not only in the eyes of the law, but within my own heart. That evening, after the trial, my house glowed with warm light. Eleanor, Alfreda, Cynthia, and new friends from the garden club came to celebrate. They brought cakes, flowers, and wine, not to borrow money or offer pity, but to share the quiet joy of a well-earned victory. Eleanor raised the first glass, to justice, to freedom, and to women who refuse to be used. I laughed, a real laugh, unforced and unbitter. We clinked glasses, the sound of crystal echoing like the closing chords of an old song. Renata, Alfreda said, her 80-year-old eyes glimmering with wisdom, today, you didn't just win a trial. You won back your life. She was right. When everyone left, the house was silent again, just the ticking of the clock on the wall. I sat down on the sofa, the same sofa where Lena once sat, treating me like an unpaid maid. Now, it was no longer a symbol of servitude. It was a witness to my freedom. 3 months later, I did something I had never dared to imagine in my life. I sold the old house. That house had contained laughter, tears, and countless moments when I'd lied to myself that everything was fine. When I signed the papers, my hands didn't shake, because I knew I wasn't losing anything. I was reclaiming myself. I moved into a small apartment downtown, bright and sunlit, with a balcony overlooking the park. Every morning, I brewed coffee, sat by the window, and watched sunlight filter through the trees, feeling my heart light as air. I divided the money from the sale in two. Half I donated to organizations protecting the elderly from family financial abuse, the other half I kept for living, not just surviving. I began painting again, traveling, and volunteering with women who had been exploited by their children or husbands. I told my story, not to complain, but to prove that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. One spring afternoon, I received news from an acquaintance. Max and Lena had moved to a small apartment on the outskirts of town. Lena had started working for the first time in years, and Max was struggling to pay off debts. I listened to the update like one listens to a weather report, neither glad nor sad, just acceptance. Perhaps hardship would teach them what my generosity never could, the value of work, of independence, of gratitude. That evening, I stood on my balcony, the soft wind brushing my hair, moonlight shimmering over the city. I thought of the woman I had been a year ago, a trembling shadow clutching her phone, waiting for a thank you that would never come. That woman was gone. From her ashes, a new one had been born. Renata Richter, 72 years old, the rightful owner of her own life. I took a sip of wine and smiled. True love never has a price, and freedom is never too expensive, I whispered. Then I thought of Robert, my husband, gone so long ago. You'd be proud of me now, my love. I finally learned that the most important person I have to love and protect is myself. A gentle breeze swept past, and I could almost feel his presence, like the peaceful silence of the universe answering back. Now, every morning I wake without that old heaviness in my chest. I draw the curtains open, take a deep breath, and smile at the woman in the mirror. The wrinkles are deeper, but my eyes are brighter, the light of someone who has finally found herself. I walk in the park, meet Eleanor and my new friends, talk, Laugh, and share small, ordinary joys. No1 asks me for money. No1 needs me to save them, and that, I've learned, is the purest kind of peace. That night, I wrote the final line in my journal. My name is Renata. I am 72 years old, and I have finally learned that the most important person I have to love and protect is myself. I closed the notebook and set it beside a cup of warm tea. Outside, the night sky was full of stars. I looked up, feeling as if the whole universe was smiling back. That I had lost a family, but found myself. That I had lost money, but regained my dignity. That I had lost the past, but reclaimed my future, and to me, that was the greatest victory of all. What part of this story touched your heart the most? Tell Auntie Hattie in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt life stories.